It is, according to satellite time, 6 o'clock, right on the nose. So we'll start in with Mr. Abilo. Andy and Rob will be joining us as we go through, but because there is the three of us and we're sensitive to your time, we're going to roll. So with that, Mr. Camouflage, it's all yours, sir.
We can't see that.
I see the head.
That's all that's important right now. Everybody has what I already forwarded on
You did.
in regards to the goals. So what I'll do is I'll just go through them real briefly and then go through the objectives for each one, sort of how we're going to, as a department, fulfill those goals. If you have questions, obviously, just ask. So we'll start. The first one is the Wegmans Wellness program that we have, obviously with the relationship that we have with Wegmans in regards to the wellness programs that we offer to the community is pretty unique. So the thought this year was we would change and sort of enhance that program that we have. In other words, take the programs and the different offerings that Wegmans allows us to be able to provide and sort of expand on them. So a couple of things that we've talked about. First one is this year is the 60th anniversary of the Recreation Department. So the thought was we would look to provide possibly a new special event prior to summer kicking off, prior to obviously the July 4th celebration, with an emphasis on families. One thing that we see whenever we share our information back with Wegmans is there's always a commitment not only to communities but to families. So the thought was that we would enhance from a family program perspective a special event. The second one is expand on what we're currently doing, and that's the rewards program. As people register for programs, they accumulate rewards points and they can use that for tchotchke type items, different paraphernalia that we have. And this year with Wegmans celebrating their 100 years, we're going to be enhancing our program. So we'll just be using the new logo that Wegmans has, incorporating the Penn Rec logo, and we've got some new items that we're going to be expanding our rewards program for. And then the third one that we're going to embark on for this year, which is kind of neat, is it involves the passport program. And if you guys, as I'm sure everybody remembers, this actually originated here in Penfield. The neat thing about it is, and I've shared it several times with people, is that if you go on the Wegmans site, actually the town does have get credit on there for starting this program back in 2005, I think is when it started. So my thought this year was, how can we take this program that we're doing, as well as I think there's over 60 communities now in 5 states that have the exact same program, and sort of expand on it. So one of the things that we've kicked around is expanding this Trails Passport to include all of the playground amenities that we have in the town. So it would go from just a Trails Passport to as well as a playground passport. So people would be able to see, again, ties back into the family component, be able to see what playgrounds are available in Penfield, and as well maybe even have some sort of a similar marking system, so as families visit or check out the playgrounds in Penfield, there's sort of a payback for that. The other thing that we're going to be discussing with Wegmans is we'd like to see this sort of go to the next level in regards to technology. One of the things that we've kicked around is a lot of people, when they show up to the trails now, they'll carry their smartphone with them, or they'll have their smartphone with them. One of the things that we've discussed as a department is, rather than people having to do a rubbing when they get done or they get started with their hike in the passport, is now we could do some sort of QR code so people would be able to scan it, more or less creating an app that would be able to allow that information get downloaded. So that's the other proposal that Steve and I are going to have a discussion with Wegmans about, sort of taking this to the next level. Every year when we submit our proposal for the next year for Wegmans, for what we're going to do with the funds that we receive from them, we always give them an update on what we've done in the years past. So this year, what we've asked is to have a sit-down meeting with them to be able to go over some of these new conceptual ideas. So I think this has a real opportunity to sort of take that program to the next level. It's been around now, like I said, for 10 years, so I think it's time that, again, it only makes sense since it started here that we be the first one to sort of
Take it to the next level.
Yeah.
Yeah, great relationship, great partnership that was developed over the years and continues to grow.
Any questions on that one?
No, I really like the QR code.
Yeah, my only comment is that sounds like a good intern-type project.
It'd be
where-
a great intern.
I don't know if the timing is such, but
Right.
we like to, at this time of year, throw that out, the opportunity to have either from a technical perspective as well as, a rec wellness perspective. If there's some opportunity there for you to reach out to try to see if there's an
Do you
intern.
have one coming?
We don't have one. This is the first time in several years that we don't have one, or we don't have one lined up. A lot of times, we don't have one in the winter, we'll have one in the fall, or we'll have one in the spring. This is the first time that we don't even have one lined up. That's not to say that we won't get, one or two that maybe will come on board in the fall, but right now, we don't have
Yeah, I
anyone.
don't think it's quite of an Eagle Scout type
No.
project, but
No.
an intern type.
More of an intern. We've done some of that, say, investigative work with some of the more techie kind of stuff. With the last intern that we had, Chris, did some investigative work for us on things like, how we could benefit from the way we use Facebook. We've implemented some of those steps. We even looked at different things, even including Instagram, is that an option for us down the road? So an intern would be able to do something like this, at least give us some framework to work off of. The second goal ties around that youth sports council that we started about a year and a half ago. And this past year, I think we met 3 times this past year, and the goal is that we'll continue to meet 3 times. But the thought was, in those meetings, was we would like to provide and sort of start to become an avenue for training or for some educational type of programs, not specific to a sport, but specific to sports in general. So the thought was that we would work with a number of the agencies that are out there. One of the big ones that already provides these type of programs is University of Rochester, their sports medicine program. They'll be able to provide, possibly be able to provide some training classes for the youth sports coaches between lacrosse, football, baseball, soccer, basketball. Open it up to that organizations for things such as concussion awareness, ACL injury prevention, those type of programs. So we can provide it at the youth level and hopefully give some people some awareness of, safety around the type of activities that they're providing.
Isn't the UR Medicine over at the Y doing that?
They probably do. They probably offer quite a few. I know they do a number of programs through the school, but again, the hope is that we can get them when they're a little bit younger and maybe even get some of the volunteer coaches that don't always have access to those kind of training, just give them some awareness.
I was just thinking UR is over there. There are some doctors there.
Yep.
and they do it.
Well, and the
Maybe
sports
there's
performance
a way to.
portion of it too.
The sports
together.
performance group, actually, I've already got 2 emails out to Cam in regards to trying to get something set up here. So the hope is we can provide 2 different trainings this year.
Chris,
Yep.
do the coaches, are they trained in CPR for the most part?
For travel sports,
Well, those that would, come to the regular consortium meetings, the youth council, Penfield Youth Baseball, lacrosse.
it's a good question. To be honest with you, Rob, I don't know if they require it as, I don't know if, Penfield Little League requires it for their youth sport coach. I know they do offer trainings. I don't know if it's a requirement, though, that they are certified. It's a good question. I can ask back when we meet next.
Obviously, more is better. So
Correct.
if there's an opportunity there to partner, if you're already sort of opening the dialogue with the University of Rochester, maybe they have some form of community or training where, I know you can do the layman CPR
Yep.
to know how to do it without necessarily going through the certification process.
Yep.
But it's just something to look into.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
The other area that we're going to investigate is, again, around some awareness training. Last year, we were involved with Bivona And there was a relationship that was started there with possibly offering, and then this could roll out beyond just the organizations. It could roll out community-wide, again, around awareness, in areas such as child abuse detection. So that's the other emphasis that we'll look to investigate for this year. The third goal is the smoke-free piece, which we started again, about a year and a half ago, regards to looking at where and what the town would do. So, as you obviously all are aware, we're going to do the smoke-free piece around our playgrounds. I've already contacted the Smoke-Free Coalition, and they're willing and able to do our signage for us. So the thought is that we'll start the promotion for that this summer. Just seems like it's a timely in regards to the most activity around our playgrounds, and with the new one here that's being installed at Town Hall. The thought is that we'll start the promotion for that as well as put up the signage. So again, it's something that can be done. This is an example of what can be, and then we can put our town logo on it. We can put some wording of, thanks for your cooperation. But this is the type of signage that we can do, and then we'd install them at all. I think we had a count of 8 or 9 playgrounds, and that's even including the Dayton's Corners. So that's that would take care of the smoke-free piece. And then the next goal talks about the one area that was identified in that Parks Improvement Plan that we did 2 years ago. And that is the identification for a potential box turf facility and what would be involved in that type of a facility. Again, it's sort of a longer range goal than it is, what we'd like to do this year. That's why the objectives that are on here are really sort of the beginning stages of identifying costs, potential revenue sources. Again, going back to that partnership with those youth sports organizations is to see what kind of input they would have in regards to both programmatically, but as well as financially. So those are the opportunities that we're going to look at this year, is sort of taking that concept and seeing what parameters we need to sort of work within as we move forward, and if it's even something that's obviously we've had preliminary discussions. We all feel it would be something that would be needed and could be used in the town, but obviously a lot of that's driven by cost and other factors. So,
And ideally, probably at the Harris Whelan location.
that was where we identified when we did the improvement plan, was that that would make sense, and then from a type of facility, it's got a number of different avenues that it can go between, being a turfed piece that is being able to be used in the wintertime for potential skating rink, to off-season when it's not being used for that, then it's obviously a turf facility, so it would be a year-round facility versus just a facility that could be used when the weather's decent.
Okay.
Then the last one that's listed on there is, I continue to list it on there every year, is the continuation of the 501c3. And when I did it this year, we were talking about it as a staff. Somebody brought it up of taking it off. I said, I'm not going to take it off until
we get there, right?
Get there. That's correct.
It's probably been the most frustrating item for Chris and I think we've heading down a path of utilizing McConville Considine.
Let's do it.
And do it that way, because we just have been kind of, we move a little bit, and then we take a few steps back, and then we try again. So I think, we've teed it up with Pete Weisshire as an FYI, and I think he's got somebody within their office that is able to kind of make that happen.
Can we
So,
track that during the year? I'd like to, if we have somebody that's gonna
Yep.
kind of follow it up, so it doesn't-
Well, I think-
next year Chris isn't sitting here.
I think their interest
constantly-
is start it and get it done. It's not that complicated.
No, I don't think.
And
it is.
so, I think we've overcomplicated it.
Okay.
So,
Well, that's all right, to be thorough, and if it's something that's a new venture,
so,
Okay.
So from a goal standpoint, that's where we as a department, we stand for goals for 2016. Obviously, a few of those are going to be much more time consuming and will require much more input, not only from the department, but from the community. So, we're excited. I think there's a couple of really neat opportunities for the department really to expand some of the program services that we do, or program opportunities that we're doing, so looking forward to it.
Chris, just a quick question. The holiday event at the rec center and then the Halloween event
Yes.
are still very well attended and very popular. So obviously, I think it was the Halloween event this year that was just absolutely mobbed because of the weather.
Yep.
And so, I mean, it was very difficult to get through there with strollers and kids. So is there, have you sort of debriefed over the last couple of months on those two particular events to kind of see maybe what changes could be made moving forward, or I don't want to say necessarily different venues, because we only have so many venues available to us, but just sort of making it a little bit different or more efficient?
Yeah, we actually, both of them, we debriefed, usually, I think both of them we did the week after we held it, so it's still fresh in our mind. Halloween is historically, especially the last 4 or 5 years since we've been back at the community center, has fallen, knock on wood, has fallen on absolutely perfect evenings, perfect fall evenings, clear nights, cool, and coupled with all the activities that are going on, from not only the trick-or-treat street, the activity or the games, then you throw in the wagon rides and the stuff that's going on outside, the Ghost Walk. It's become a very large event, and the only thing that we really were able to identify this year was that moving forward, we actually did it this year, but we did it after we started the event, and we realized the number of people that were showing up. We'll begin to utilize the parking lot more for just parking. In the past, we've always used what would be the north and the northwest corner of that lot for the wagon rides. And once we realized we really needed that area of the parking lot for cars versus the wagon rides, I think moving, as we look into 2016, we'll know that going in, so we'll have those extra spaces available. From a venue standpoint, this is one that was at the community center, and we moved it off-site to Rothfuss.
The weather wasn't good.
We did.
The first year.
The years, I think we were there 2 or 3 years,
Yeah,
and it
just
seemed
around
like
the
every
road.
night it was rain, wind, and we had the tents, which added a cost to the program.
Very significant cost. yeah.
So we moved it back, and when we moved it back, we had a few years where it was just right. But again, from a program standpoint, it's gotten maxed out to what we can offer on that night. It's just a matter of how we schedule and where we schedule the activities outside.
Okay.
Truthfully, Rob, I know it's an issue for getting people in and out. I love the fact that it is that large, and I think part of it is that's become that event now. Several years ago, when we were over at Rothfuss, there was other groups that were going. Harris Hill was running theirs with their PTA at the time, and we were trying to find our niche in regards to that type of program, and I think we've done that now. So that's why I enjoy seeing the number of people there. It gets a little bit difficult during certain periods of time, but I think just a few little tweaks to the program, I think we'll be all right.
Very good.
Holiday event's a little different. That one, when we debrief it, we always realize that that's a tough time to be able to run a special event. That is right at the beginning of the holiday season. It's on a Friday night when people are either doing parties with work, parties at another event. They're using that Friday night to start their shopping. It's just a real difficult time. We've tried everything from we've done plays, we've done dance,
Right.
It's just a hard evening to be able to draw people in, unlike Halloween, for whatever reason. So we'll continue to change it. We've had a couple discussions that maybe next year we do away with the pancake piece and use that time for something else. So there'll be you'll see some more changes to the holiday before we really change too much in Halloween.
All right.
Just quickly back to the youth sports initiative in terms of some of the coaching programs and things like that. Are you aware of any other communities or organizations that kind of do that already? Is there some model out there of a community that kind of...
I mean, for the partnership and...
In having, in the programs, like you said?
Webster does have a coalition or a committee where all of their youth sports organizations sit, talk. Theirs is a little different because it does have more of a facility focus, where this one was very clear that this was not the point of this one. This committee, this was to be program-based.
Program education to.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they actually did, to be totally honest, that's where I got the idea of doing some of the education classes. Webster did theirs last year, and they offered a program, and it might even been through U of R that actually ran it, and they held it at, I think, the Aquatic Center, and they had a pretty decent
Yeah.
turnout. So the idea to me was, because of the relationship that the rec department has with all these groups currently is unique, especially from a community standpoint, that we could, sort of begin to offer on a broader scale some of these programs.
Yeah, I'm going to I'll poke around. I brought it up because my daughter has just started training at a facility called Changing the Community. Have you ever heard of that? I'd never heard of it. It's in the city off of West Avenue, between West and Shiloh Avenue. And it is where, in the city, athletes, city school athletes primarily, are training off-season. And there's a lot of volunteer coaches, and you've got kids who are in certain, primarily track and field and football is what they tend to focus on. But they have a lot of different type programs there, and I'll poke around as far as coaches and what do they do to train their coaches, because they've got, I think, a lot of people who are athletes turned coaches, and then they're also have a lot of mentoring that goes on there. I'd honestly never heard of it, and then just this facility that I drop her off at, where she does track or does field events, they have this whole program and this Changing the Community is called CTC. And when you hear about some of these kids from the city school teams really making it big, when you hear about big time scholarships, they've most likely gone through this program. They start them really, really young, and it's where they it's almost like a boys and girls club concept for athletes.
I would say specific to athletes.
Yeah, so I'll do some poking around because she's still there for a couple of weeks, and I'm sure they must have maybe they've got some sort of possibility there, or some synergy,
or some leads or something. Because the thought is, as we met as a group, is we've got a lot of resources in the community already. I mean, one of the things that we discussed even was the athletic director, who sits on this group as well, is going to some of his, what I'll say, successful coaches in regards to coaches who have been around for a long time. I'll use somebody like a Dave Hennessy, bringing them in and sort of educate the youth sport coaches as to what makes a successful coach. You're not hearing this from somebody who's only been a field hockey coach for 2 years. This person's been a track coach for a long time, and obviously very well respected. So there's a lot of those type of resources already within Penfield that we should tap into, and at the youth sports level start to educate and give some awareness to.
Yeah, and I think it's really timely, and I think there might even be a piece that you could possibly work in there that I think is much needed, in terms of coaches are often the adult that a child will go to, or that a teen will go to, before a parent, before a teacher or a counselor, if they're having a problem or if there's some sort of trauma going on, and even maybe working some of that in. You mentioned Coach Hennessy, there were a couple student deaths recently, and both of the young men had been involved in the track program, and Coach Hennessy really spearheaded, dropped everything for the team to intervene and be there for the kids. And I think that might be a welcomed component to have some training of
I think there's a level of awareness that a lot of coaches don't realize, that when they either put their name on the line or they get tapped to be a coach, it's more than just drawing plays up and running a practice. There's a lot of that again, you can go back to some of these successful coaches and say, these are the type of things that at a young age they need to understand, or at the beginning stages they need to understand it's more than just this piece of coaching.
Yeah,
there's all these other
mentoring,
parts.
that counseling, and so
Okay.
good job. Yeah.
Okay. We're a hair over. Any wrap-up comments you'd like to make, Chris?
The only other thing that was on this list that I just wanted to, is I did list that the rec track system was updated. Right now, even though I listed it on here, there was, potential for some additional training. We think the training that we received back in the fall will be it, so I don't anticipating any additional training. The training that we're going to be receiving from now on is going to be individual based. So I think we're all right.
And it worked out very well for your maiden voyage that just recently took place.
Started January 2nd, and we didn't have any issues, so yes.
All right.
A few minor bumps, but nothing that was...
And just remind the board again, approximate percentage of folks signing up for programs
I
online?
think it's between 80 and 84% are online now. I'll put it in this way, in the past, when I first started at Penfield, when we would start registration, there'd be 4 to 5 days of 4 clerks inputting information. We were through all of our paper copies with more or less 2 clerks in 1 day. So it's much different.
And now for the lodges, it's, opens up at 10 a.m. and refresh. People are waiting.
They're like concert tickets.
Which is great. And I tell everybody, believe me, it's 10 a.m.
24-hour
It is.
boarding on Southwest.
Absolutely.
All right, Chris, thanks. Any questions, comments for Chris? I think his team just, continues to really just kick it up a notch in everything that they're doing, which is, is fantastic. And things are growing not only from program offerings, attendance, the rec track activities, online capabilities, all of those things just continue to grow and expand. So great job. Great job, Chris. All right. All right, so here with her maiden voyage this evening is Barbara. Talk a little bit about the finance aspect of things, and I'm guessing will keep it very fresh and new here overall. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hopefully you each had a chance to kind of review what I sent ahead of time or what Anna forwarded ahead of time. So I'll just touch on each one, and then as questions come up, we'll go over them. The budget side obviously is an important piece, and you guys were integral in putting that together, so you know that one pretty well, that's a framework of where we intend to go. But I guess my focus this year is, as kind of priorities shift and other things come up during the year, I'll be bringing things to you guys a bit more often than perhaps you saw things in the past, as far as if there needs to be adjustments or amendments, just to kind of keep you really up to date on where we are. You'll still be getting a monthly report. What I'll add into that monthly report is a little bit more of a narrative on the amount of revenues we've received each month and expenditures, just to kind of give you an idea of where we are each month on track as far as bringing things in and things going out the door as well. Revenue side, the supervisor and I spoke a little bit that we're going to keep a very close eye on the sales tax revenue. As great as it is that gas and everything goes down, it's great for all of us on one side, less great on the side, the revenue side. So we'll be keeping a close watch on that. And I do intend to meet a little bit more often with the help of Amy and Joanne, to meet with more of the departments to kind of go over, as priorities may change during the year or as things come up, to meet with them and say, where are you, how are things looking, and have a little more interaction with each of the department heads, just to keep things keep my hand on, or I guess, on the pulse. So that's kind of a synopsis on the budget side of things. We did actually, as you know, the tax collection season, we have reached our town revenue as of last Friday, so that's a nice bonus to everything. And then we'll just be dispersing out to the fire districts and the ambulance as of today. Any questions you want to on the budget side? As I said, you guys know that side pretty well. So. As far as banking, we'll still continue with M&T as our lead bank and still utilize First Niagara as well. We have some, as you know, some money invested at First Niagara, and we also received the ban from First Niagara for the Parkview White Village sewer project, so we're still working with them. And the new town credit card is through First Niagara as well. As you know, that's kind of for things that in the past people used their own credit cards for travel and such, and we're trying to get a little more handle on that side. That's why we implemented the new credit card. And has had a little bit of use so far, and it's
You said when people go on conferences and so on? Is that what you want people to use that?
we'll be using which we already have for a couple, for Mark Valentine's trip down to New York City. It's just so that it's a town charge, so if you use your own credit card, I know personally I have like a city dividends card. Obviously, if I was booking something, I'd be getting money back for that. And if the town's really paying for it, I'd rather see it paid the town directly. So we're kind of added that relationship in with First Niagara as well, so, which is always good, kind of keep, the different banks and your hand in each of them. We're also transitioning away from some paper statements, moving to e-statements, because that's just is more efficient, and you get them the 1st of every month instead of waiting till like the 15th when they normally come. The other thing I hope to implement in the next probably month or so is remote check deposit. It's just a little machine, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, to scan in checks, and we're going to start it in our department with Joanne and Amy to do deposits from the builder's checks and such. Provided that goes well, we had a meeting with M&T with Amy Steckloff and Peggy that hopefully get a machine for their office as well, and then intending to get away from everyday pickups from Loomis and cut that cost back a little bit, because that's immediate deposit, just kind of like with your smartphone. It's just a little capture machine instead. So I'm working with M&T to get that in place, and just kind of revisiting the services M&T does for us and kind of updating things. I've been in touch with Elise and Carrie over at the courts to add in e-statements on their side as well, because they don't have that. I want to have a little more involvement with them as well over at the courts as far as their banking and what they need. So we're bringing that along.
Provides another set of eyes.
Another set of eyes just to kind of
So that,
review
we've got that as well.
how things go. So that's kind of the banking front and some of the goals I intend to do, and just kind of keep things going in that side. We're about, right now, the interest rate is at 0.1, which it would be nice if it was better, but it's better than it was last year when it was 0.08, so it's upticked a bit. But we'll do what we can. So that's kind of the banking piece. The next one is probably the one we're hoping to, which I'm kind of excited about to see a little more change. As you know, we have the new purchasing policies in place, and all the department heads had them and went through them and reached out to me with any questions, which was great. And then actually with the folks in DPW, Tony and I have gone down with Amy and Joanne as well, and I want them to be a little more involved in a lot of things that go on in the department, so everybody can kind of have answers when people are looking for, looking to have questions answered. We went down and we met with the people in DPW, and they were very receptive and asking a lot of questions and how they can do to make sure that they're meeting all the things that are stated in the policy for quotes and citings and sources. And so that was good. It was, I think those meetings have been successful. And in conjunction with that, we actually had representatives from the Department of Labor come in to also meet with the division heads, department heads from DPW to talk about prevailing wage rates and just when they apply. And that was a great question and answer session. The guy from the Department of Labor was, they're very, very helpful, and I think it was good for our guys to kind of hear how things work, and if they have questions, they can just pick up the phone and call there. That was a good meeting as well.
It can be really confusing.
It is very confusing, and I think coming away from that meeting, they all felt a little better about understanding what they need to do, and
What you think prevailing wage might apply to doesn't, and what you would think it doesn't apply to, it does.
Exactly, and the
Yeah.
distinction with Article 8 and Article 9,
Yep.
and so I think and that again, they've been very receptive to that, and I've met with several of them after that when they come back with follow-up questions, so that's been great.
And I think that built a good relationship between them and the town. The fact that we reached out, had them come in, go through some different scenarios and what have you. And I think we really paved a nice relationship there to help continue to grow, expand, learn, make sure we're doing the right things. And so overall, I think that worked out very well.
Very proactive.
Yeah. It's a great lead by Barbara, to have the contact, get the person in, and then have especially our foremen, who are the ones there trying to do the things and making sure they're doing it right. So the Garbacks and the Bob Moores and Tom Gomes and Jimmy Kreckmans. I think it was a great learning session overall.
And actually, I've met with each of them individually after that. And so it's just been great. I mean, I'm glad they feel very comfortable. They come up and ask questions and, call me up. Can I come up and meet with you for 10 minutes? And I said, yep, I'm here to help you. And that's, we're all in it together. So let's, do the best we can. So that's been great.
And the paperwork is coming up a lot more complete and a lot better. I think that will save more time on your end chasing as well as frustration on the end. So.
The Logix piece, I'm kind of continuing to work with Logix to have them kind of customized for our needs. We haven't been able to really fully roll out all the modules within Logix because we're still kind of working through some security issues on how they do things and how we would like things. And I'm hopeful that by mid-year, I've contacted them a few times about some of our priorities, and they told me that they hope for mid-year, so I'm going to keep pushing that. One thing I have reached out to Logix as well as Paychex. I would like to have an interface between the two and be able to upload our payroll file into our financial software, because right now everything's entered manually. It's very much a duplication of effort. You do it and enter it in payroll side, and then you're entering it again on the so I have been in touch with both entities, and I'm going to kind of work in between to see if we can figure out something. And it seems like it would be seems like it should be easy, but I don't know if it will be. But that's a goal. That's definitely a goal, and I think that would make things run a little easier and less chance of error too, with not repeating efforts. So that's a good one, and that's the one I'm kind of focusing on. I was just in touch with the Paychex rep today. So the insurance side, we are going with, as you know, we have PERMA again for this year. This past Friday, after I had sent this out to you, I did meet with representatives from First Niagara to go over some of our workers' comp things, and I was happy to say that we had 12 open cases, and we now have 6 of them closed. We have, First Niagara is kind of our advocate to deal with our liability insurance through HCC and then also through PERMA. They kind of pick up the phone and say, where are you with these claims? So that, and the woman from First Niagara was fantastic. She was very, very knowledgeable, came from Travelers, so really understands it. Unfortunately, Tracy wasn't able to join me for that meeting Friday, but I had a whole packet of stuff to share with her after, so she's looking through that. So that was a very productive meeting. One thing also with insurance, the liability package comes up in June. We are going to go out to the market again to kind of see if there's any, where we are and if we're still getting a good deal, and if there's any changes we want to make. And we'll just, as we approach that, we'll kind of discuss that further as far as some of our, what we have for, I think ours is $2,500 a deductible. If we want to look at any of those things, we can, as that approaches, we can see where we can go. So those are kind of my snapshot of things of where we are. Any questions or concerns or on that end of things?
I think a couple of things just to reiterate. One, having Barbara in the first 6 months, new set of eyes really has helped look to streamline some things. Certainly she has been very aggressive as it relates to, from an electronic standpoint, elimination of duplicate efforts and things like that. Logix, while it's a new system, we were their first New York customer. They've since picked up some others, but I think we are really helping to set the tone for changes, upgrades, modifications, and what have you, to make it as robust as it can be. So Barbara has done a nice job of staying in contact with them, pushing a little bit and a little bit pulling, but we're kind of working through that. And the other item that I just think is important just to put on the table so that everybody kind of just to reinforce Barbara's kind of opening statement is that while gas is going down, so we're seeing less costs for our fuel and things like that. That is a double-edged sword because that really impacts our sales tax revenue, and so we've always gone into our sales tax to be conservative but realistic. I mean, we don't plan for 1 million and expect to get 2 million. On the other side of the coin, we don't want to be too crazy. And here's a great example where I think we set a reasonable budget item for 2016 for revenue. But here's a case that when we get our first quarter of 2016, it'll be interesting to see how much less that is, and a big piece of that, certainly will be attributed to, low cost in fuel and things like that. So just something that Barbara and I have been, speaking about, that's something that we're really going to have to keep a close eye on, because as you're aware, we got hit in a lot of areas with revenue, lack of revenue for this year, county work and school work, MCC work and things like that. So we'll want to just, kind of keep that, and I think it'll be good as we push out, or as Barbara pushes out her monthly report, just to kind of give you a snapshot as to how things are shaping up.
Great.
All right. Great.
As far as the personnel, item 2, there are no staffing change, no capital investment for this year in our department, and no change for our software. We're, as I said, we're working with Logix to try and get it to be a little more what we need it to be, so hopefully that happens in the next few months. As far as training, I'll be attending the New York State GFOA conference in April, and just doing the kind of seminars that are offered throughout the county, which are always helpful. I did the one in Batavia, which was great. Also for Amy and Joanne, as things come up, either with software training for Logix or any of the accounting ones, that either one of them, it would be beneficial to them to attend. I certainly will be supportive of that, as I know you will as well. Actually, it's with local sales tax. I'm doing there's a webinar in 2 weeks about local sales tax, the annual outlook and long-term trend. So I just signed up for that. So that'll be kind of an interesting thing. So I'll provide you some feedback with that once I do it. It's the 24th, I believe. And then for involvement with other departments, it's, as you know, we're kind of wrapping up 15 and getting ready for the audits from Bonadio for the financial statements. As part of that is updating our infrastructure for the GASB reporting. So I'll be working with engineering and DPW, pulling those things together. And then kind of the big one there is, as we move forward, which is scary to say when we start planning for the 2017 budget, since it's only February, but we'll be doing I'd like to focus on some multi-year planning with the department head specifically, kind of get a little more focus on each individual area for long-range planning. So I want to do a little bit more of that to give you guys a bigger, not a bigger picture, kind of a more micro picture of what's going on. So that's something I look forward to doing this year. And then I don't really have any of my, because I wasn't here for last year to put forth the goals and priorities. That part I don't have.
We're blazing new trails.
I'm
Leave it at that. We're blazing some new trails. Questions, comments for Barbara? Anything you want to see more or less?
No, I think it's awesome that you're going forward with all these new initiatives with electronics, I mean, we all love Bob Eden, but he didn't embrace it, and you had the same person all over the years. Now we have a new face, and it's embracing technology, and it's like, catching up and starting over, and I give you kudos for what you've initiated so far. It's great.
Thank you.
Good. All right, Barbara, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And we'll move on to the Assessor's Office and a piece of IT, if you will. Ann Buck?
Sure. Good evening.
Good evening.
For 2015, the goals have been met for the Assessor's Office. We remain at 100% of market value for the 2015 roll. What we have seen this year in sales is an increase, so this is the first time we're really seeing the market kind of move. For the sales in 2015, we're seeing about 2 to 3%, and we're seeing differences in styles. One of the properties that has really jumped have been split levels.
Really?
Who knew?
My day, Ann.
But, so we are seeing some changes and the market's upswinging, so that's a good thing.
Why are you seeing split levels, Jim?
I think it's because of the affordability of split levels. So,
Okay.
anything,
People want to come to Penfield, right?
people want
We
to
have a
come
lot
to
of
Penfield, you
lot of split
can
levels.
typically get those properties under 200,000.
Yeah,
So that's why we're seeing an increase
just
there.
mark mine up.
For 2016, of course, the goal is to file the roll for 2016. We're in valuation right now, in valuation review. and to adhere to real property tax law and assist our residents when applicable. From the computer standpoint, last year we implemented the cyber-safe training for all employees, all end users, and we also did all of DPW who may touch a computer now and then. So that was very successful. Computer training remains available to workers on an as-need basis for the benefit of the department. If it benefits the department, we take a look at that, and then people can go forward to training. We just received our new schedule, and I'll be sending that out to all departments and seeing who needs training or who wants training.
Annie, have we hit any, serious virus? I mean, from time to time, the county will have something hit their system, and we have to shut down the computers at night, and
Right,
they go
so-
through and clean everything up.
Let me just say this. We used to have a lot of issues with viruses, and it was very costly to the town.
Yeah. I bet.
That was one of the reasons when cyber-safe training came that we thought would be beneficial, and so far it's proven to be such.
Good.
So
Yeah.
we just have not seen.
And I'd just like to give Ann some kudos on that. She's worked very closely with Synergy, who provides service to us. And then New Horizons is the group that we trained with. And when we made the decision to do the training, we wanted to open it up as broadly as we could because I think it was well worth the investment in time to go through and do that with the idea that hopefully we could not be in a situation where computers were down,
Right.
we were wiping for viruses and a bunch of other associated things. So
Great.
worked
Good to hear.
out well, and a good effort by Ann to really push that and make that kind of a top priority for 2015. And then some, carryover into 2016, because the thing we want to do is, as new employees come in, or if we need to do any type of refresher, that we stay ahead of that curve because of the investment we made.
And then for 2016, we're looking at updating all of our policies and practice for IT, and we have asked for the guidance of the Bondier Group to come in and help us with that. And then, of course, going forward, we constantly remain to look for effective ways to implement technology and lessen our cost. And that's all I have, if you have any questions.
Questions for Ann?
No, I mean, just earlier when you were talking about home sales, you said that the split levels seem to be the kind of trending in sales. What other trends have you seen or are you seeing right now?
So what we're seeing for the 2015 has been, one, split levels. Ranches remain very popular, so what we're seeing is our older ranches. Since the newer ranches are over 300,000, those are some coming up also within the market.
When you say newer ranches, like patio homes?
I mean, like stuff that was built from 2012 forward,
Yeah, okay.
anything like that, whether it be a patio or not,
Yeah.
anything that is that one floor, pretty much they are over 300,000
Yeah.
for a average ranch. So we're seeing our older stuff come up. There is pretty much two markets in the town of Penfield. There used to be, a long time ago, you could say that there was two markets. One was with relocation and then the actual market. Today what we're seeing is your actual market for a house that's 1963 built, maybe maintained well, and then the person who's been watching HGTV and all the updates have been done. So really we're now seeing two separate markets. You can have a house built in 1963, well maintained. That's going to get you a number. You're going to get that house that has maybe put some amenities in it. That's going to get you a totally different number. So we're tracking that now because it's kind of hard when sales come in. We do go through, we do send people out. You can have such a large spread. We have to make sure that we're looking at the right thing before we take a look at
So
where the
square
assessment is.
footage and year built really is not a constant in terms of a good comparison necessarily.
They are one of the things that you look at, but there's really a whole box of tools in there that you have to take a look at. I mean, you have square footage, you have condition, you have grade of construction, style of construction, you have, of course, location, which that always remains. Bed, bath, basement, finish of basement. Do they have one of those theaters in the basement? You have a number of things that you have to look at.
Great, okay.
Yeah, so 1963 ranch here and 1963 ranch here could be a pretty big spread between the two, depending upon what has been done or not done, and location and all those other items.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's just not a blanket across. Okay, other questions or comments? All right, we do not have Tracy tonight. Tracy has been out with a bum back, and so we pushed her. I didn't want her to stay over tonight, so we pushed her to our last meeting. But I want to thank Chris and Barbara and Ann for everything. Appreciate it. Drive careful home, and we'll see you guys about 6:30, 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. All right. Thanks. We'll grab about 7 or 8 minutes before we go live with the work session. So we'll officially call this meeting to order for February 10th, 2016 work session. We'll let the minutes reflect that all the board members are here, as well as some members of staff and a number of folks in the audience. Prior to this meeting, from 6 to about 10 to 7, we'll also let the minutes reflect that the board reviewed goals and priorities with Recreation Department, Finance, and the Assessor's Office, and those goals and priorities were reviewed with the board. So now that we're officially called to order, we have approval of the minutes of the January 27, 2016 meeting. Would entertain a motion of approval of those minutes.
I'll move.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, the minutes will stand approved as written. Thank you, Lisa. Monthly reports. Most of the monthly reports are in. We're awaiting monthly reports from Justice Courts, Personnel, Public Works, and Finance Office. And I'm sure we'll have those by end of week within our time frame. There are no public hearings this evening. We do have several guests, and our first guest is Mr. Terry Williams, proposed mixed-use building at 1861 Penfield Road. And we'd invite Mr. and Mrs. Williams, if she likes, to come forward, right up to the front table. And then I'll ask Mr. Costello to tee that up for discussion.
Thank you, Tony. I've been meeting with Mr. Williams, actually for maybe a couple of years now, but more recently he's become more interested in developing the lot adjacent to the Itakati restaurant on the Fox property many years ago. He has had Mr. Summerhays prepare a site plan for our review. The PRC did look at it this morning. There are some, it's kind of an interesting process regarding the grades of the property. We thought it was fairly simple initially, but it's not as simple as you always think it is. So they are working with some grade issues. One of the big issues is they need to provide handicap parking on the site, which he is showing up by the front of the building there, close to the road. Thank you. And he's identified that in this area here, the grade change dropped dramatically from this point here down to where the parking area is going to be, and I think I'm going to let Terry talk a little bit about the uses in a minute, but we are currently working with Mr. Summerhays to identify grade issues. We're also working with him to identify water quality issues. He's going to be developing a bioretention area down by the piped area that we installed a couple of years ago for this area, and that would be tied into that system. Terry has also indicated that he's more than willing to work with the adjacent neighbors to create cross-access easements and parking arrangements so that there's adequate parking among all the property owners and access among the property owners. We think that's probably a good thing, particularly if if we have to get like a dumpster in here and he has to get somebody in here with a refuse truck, it's going to be easier to have cross-access to go around and not have to back up and try to pull back out of the Penfield Road. So with those kinds of issues, we will be providing those comments to the town board if this proceeds further. And with that, I'll let you talk a little bit about the types of uses that you want to install there and what your intent is for the property.
I own Aspen Lighter Vacuum now. I'll be essentially relocating the store. There will be the plans. And then the building's going to be kind of a mixed use where there'll be an apartment upstairs and then the walkout in the bottom. It's going to be the front, there'll be 2 stories, and the back it's 3.
Terry, where's the store right now?
516 Monroe Avenue.
Yeah, okay.
So mixed use in the sense of one commercial entity and one apartment,
2 apartments.
2 apartments.
Yes.
Is it like the same, would it be the same height as Edicate? Is that about the?
Generally speaking, it looks a lot closer to the building that the Incognito business is located in right now. He tried to
I tried to mimic that, if it goes with the neighborhood. And
I know, I just think about the height, you know, you stand up higher than everything else, because the other one, hunting house, that one, a hunting barn building, that's kind of low.
Yeah, but that's,
It's a 2-story building though, and at grade, the front of the building would probably be close to this one as well. Yes.
Yeah, because this building, we did look at elevations today, the building directly to the east is higher than what they're proposing, at least the finished first
Okay.
floor elevation.
It's a couple of feet
So it kind
higher.
of goes, that's a few feet higher, this
It
one
is
steps
higher
down,
elevated.
and then Idecate steps down, so it kind of follows the grade of the road, but it, I mean, we didn't look at the top elevation, but at least the finished floors to kind of see how that laid out as going down the road.
So are you saying that are you gonna fill behind there? I mean, it doesn't seem like it's that deep, a lot.
what do you mean?
Well, because, you know, we got the hill goes down with the road.
Yeah, that's why the back would almost be like a walkout. The back of the building almost would look like 3 floors, because in the front it looks like 2.
So it would be as far out.
Like the
as,
Mexican restaurant is basically.
Right,
That's how
okay.
that's set up now.
Okay. It's kind of
The grade changes on the property in terms of getting, you know, I think he's got a 10% grade on the slope right now, getting up the driveway. And that, you know, we're gonna be working with the engineers to kind of feather that out a little bit better to make it easier to get up and down, but
People drive up through there now and park
Oh, I know.
up through there as it is.
it's kind of interesting, if you look at the configuration on the site plan of the building, he's trying to maintain the frontage to be parallel to the road, but the property itself is not parallel to the road, it's at an angle, so he's gonna have to have kind of a little bit of a funky
Yeah, it's gonna be
angle on the
twisted.
building. And he has to do that because the only way he can get the parking and the access road in on that property is to have it configured the way it is, and at the lowest point on the southerly portion of the property, he's showing a 6-foot setback from the side property line. I think it flares out to 10 feet at the top. The building inspectors right now are looking at that in terms of the state building code, as there is a requirement for separation of buildings, so we have to make sure that it does meet that. You know, the board here obviously has the approval authority to grant less setback if it's necessary. But in this case, as well as you doing that, the State Codes Bureau may be required to have to grant relief from that requirement as well, depending on the situation.
How much parking would be available?
I think for the uses that he's proposing, he's gonna have more parking than he needs. He's got the ability to add a lot more parking if he needs to at some point in the future, if the uses were to change or something of that occurred. But right now, I think, what are you looking at, 14 parking spaces?
Yeah,
something of that
like that.
nature?
Probably, like Jim said, more than I probably would need.
And I guess one of the questions that came out of our discussion this morning was, on an hourly or a daily basis, how many people do you have coming to the site?
You know, it's not like a restaurant. I mean, you know, I could have 15 to 20 people a day, but they come and go.
Right.
You know, we're not, nobody's being entertained in the vacuum industry.
Drop off and you-
Yeah, pretty much.
Except for your happy hours.
That's right.
But you do repair and sales, or?
Yes.
Okay, so. Is it more repair?
I would say so, yeah, yeah.
So our thought was that the parking at the lower end would be obviously for the staff and also for the tenants of the building, and then obviously up by the road, you'd have parking for people coming and going on an hourly basis. Delivery truck, if you had a UPS truck coming or something like that, and there is a handicap parking space there, which is probably the only realistic place to put it without really creating problems, because he is going to have a staircase coming down from the main structure down to the parking area that's below the building.
And what would your hours be?
9 till 6 during the weekdays, Saturday, 9 to 3.
You're going to keep the Ask and Later name, I
Yeah,
presume? 'cause
exactly,
It's pretty
yeah.
long-standing.
So if you see fit to move forward, his next step would be to still work out some details in the site plan, which have to be cleaned up. We'll have to find out some more information for you regarding the building code requirements, because there may need to be some shifts there if that's the case, or relief granted by the Codes Bureau. And once all that's been resolved, then I guess we could bring him back to you for a public hearing for your review.
And so is it one apartment on the second floor and then one apartment coming out the...
Walkout area.
On the walkout area?
Yeah,
Terry?
exactly.
Got it. And then you would occupy the whole, what I would call the first floor
Correct,
for the business? Got it. Okay. Board,
Yeah.
additional questions?
Nope, I'm good.
I think this has been, I think as Jim had indicated, this has been in discussion for a number of years. I think Terry has, has been very generous to the neighbors, both sides, to help out with parking, and I think that has worked out, very well. And it seems like the business fit with what he does, in his business and with the apartments, would be a nice complement to that area, because I think there's been that willingness to share parking, at their prime time, which is probably after his prime time.
Yeah, it actually the hours complement each other.
So
pretty good.
seems to work out very well. So
And I commend you for taking a look down the street at Incognito, because I think of all the places in the Four Corners, I think I get the most comments about that.
Yeah, it's nice at night to keep it lit up. It's a really nice looking building.
okay, other questions for Terry at this point? Staff, any comments that should be on the record that haven't been introduced at this point?
No, I think the key is going to be to finalize the plan for you and make sure that Terry gets what he needs and the town meets all the codes that it has to for the development.
Okay, good, great. Well, we look forward to a public hearing coming up here in near future.
Beautiful.
All right,
Thank you.
Great, thanks for your time, appreciate it.
Great.
We'll move on to our next guest, Dr. Merkley, proposed office building at 2105 5 Mile Line Road. And gentlemen, please join us at the table, and welcome.
Thank you.
Jim, if you take a minute and just further tee this up for the board.
Sure will. Again, Dr. Merkley and Bob and I met recently. Bob has indicated for a while that he would like to develop a portion of that site at 2105 5 Mile Line Road. We met recently, and last week I took them to the Historic Preservation Board. The board was generally very favorable to the proposal. They had some very minor comments regarding color schemes to kind of break the building up. It is a rather long building on the site. The board did like the idea of it being closer to the property to give it more of an urban setting, a village-type setting than being set back. We did talk about issues such as parking, because there are other uses on the site. Obviously there's the old mansion that's on the site that's being used for rental space for apartments. We recently approved the Banks Hair Salon in the little building that Bob refurbished a couple of years ago. And so now he's looking to develop this site, and I believe it's a 2,700 square foot building, single user for Dr. Merkley's office. Dr. Merkley's currently on 5 Mile Line Road. Would like to relocate here. The intent is to split a portion of this property out where the building's located, so that Dr. Merkley would actually own that portion. That would require, as you know, cross-access and parking agreements, which they've already been aware of and willing to take care of. Some very minor comments from the Historic Preservation Board the other evening regarding maybe just kind of breaking up with maybe one or two more colors than they're proposing. I think I sent you everything on...
Do you have anything?
I do. I can pass these around for you. I'll send those around, and here's a plan that he's proposing. Just send that way, send that down to Bob. He's looking at it, actually I can just let you go ahead. You've got a better handle on it than I do.
you want me to talk about the design, the location, the site?
Yeah, just kind of give a general overview.
What we want to do is create a commercial
We'll
building.
let the record reflect Bob Lindsay
Bob Lindsay, yes.
and Dr.
Dr.
Yes,
Berkeley.
all right.
What we want to do is create a commercial building that would sit on the site as looking more like a preservation historical building. The materials that are going to be used are going to be cedar clapboard, architectural shingles. It's going to be a painted building. There's not going to be any vinyl or any kind of composite products. It's going to be a wood product. We talked about different style windows. That might be one of the concerns of the preservation. I don't know if we started talking about awning windows or double hung windows. You know, we can still work the colors and the elevations with the roof lines. The actual setbacks is not going to go any further ahead than the original mansion house. We're trying to keep the same line across the front in the setbacks. What we're looking to do is split off about a half an acre for Dr. Murky to operate his dentist office, which he is kitty corner across the street. He wants to relocate, but he doesn't want to relocate far distance because he wants to keep his practice and he wants to keep his customers local in the town of Penfield. This is one of the reasons why this site is so important to him, because there is no other site that would take his needs in the village or near the Four Corners. So what we did was we came up with a design, a location that we feel that'll set back and fit in the neighborhood. The egress, we're going to be using the same means of egress onto the site. We're not going to create another cut into the road, so we're going to be reusing the existing space. We're going to have 29 parking spots on site. There's going to be 9 additional ones put in front of his building. The pre-existing mansion house has 4 apartments, which has 4 cars. The hair salon that is there has 4 chairs. They have 3 employees. Dr. Murky has, how many employees do you have total?
Myself, it's 6 of us.
There's 6 employees. We would use the parking lot across the street, municipal parking, possibility for some employee parking. It is right across the street. It's very convenient. And again, as we all drive by there, it's always empty. So we feel that, you know, the impact on the site would be able to take this building and take the usage of the building and the patients that come and go during the course of the day. His hours are Monday through Fridays, right?
Monday through Thursday.
Monday through Thursday, so
Yeah.
Fridays is an off day,
Friday,
Saturday's
Saturday.
an off day,
Sunday, yeah.
Sunday's an off day. The hair salon busiest days are Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, which then kind of offsets the impact on the property itself. So offsetting what the usage of the property and the other business that are in there, I think the two will work on the site and have enough parking on this project. We want to put some greenery, some shrubberies, fix the corner up a little bit. We all know what we've already done to the site from the time that we bought it 4 years ago, and we want to keep moving it forward. We want to create more business on the Four Corners of Penfield, which we have lost a lot of businesses on the Four Corners. We've got a lot of empty property on the Four Corners. This is going to be another additional to bring some more business to the actual town of Penfield and keep our patriots here instead of going somewhere else. That's kind of what we're trying to look to do. Dr. Murky has looked at other places, other towns, Fairport, Parrington, but he doesn't want to move out of the town of Penfield. So basically, this is why this site is so important to him.
Now, what happened to the little yellow house? Is it gone on the?
Well, the yellow house would be taken down.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah, we all know that that's distressed, and, we would not like to put any kind of money into it. We did have it rented as a residential. When Dr. Murphy started looking at the site, the lease ran out in the yellow house, so I did not renew somebody's lease, hoping to be able to do this project or another project like this. That's why we haven't done anything to the yellow house. That would be the first thing taken down on that. Part of the location of the yellow house would also occupy part of the building. It kind of goes from the yellow house and then it goes forward. So the setback, if you look on the property line, is basically running parallel to Liberty Street, which is basically the same frontage where the yellow house is. So we're not protruding closer to Liberty. Going towards 5 Mile Line Road, we kind of set it back to the same as the mansion house, not going forward to that. We want to put a sidewalk going out to the main sidewalk, out to the road, for people to be able to use the sidewalk, the parking along the road, the parking lot across the street. So we're kind of creating an access for walking traffic. As we did with the yogurt, we created that sidewalk that came up into the yogurt and then crossed the road. And then also when Mark did his pizzeria there, Mark also has no objection for us to be able to park people over there. He put a sidewalk connecting his parking lot to our parking lot, so the patrons can go from place to place, because again, we feel that a village is walking distance, parking, and walking. And
That's going to be my question, was the connectivity. There was some opportunity there, or some plan for some sort of pedestrian connectivity.
Yeah. Any questions, or I could keep rolling something?
So could you, it appears as though everything on one floor, but as I, take a look at, this elevation here, Bob, is there anything planned for the basement?
Yeah, the basement would be mechanicals.
Okay, so just all the...
Yeah, because it's a dentist office, and in dentistry, and just like in computers, every day more stuff comes out, new stuff comes in. We got to be able to change the equipment. By having a dentist office, I've done a lot of them before. There's a lot of water lines, vacuum lines, gas lines, all kinds of stuff. And everything that runs underneath and comes up through a little part of a chair in a dentist. So having a basement, a crawl space, something below it is very important for a dentistry. Because change is always there. And one thing about commercial buildings, you always got to be able to change it and refit it. Otherwise, the building is no good. As tenants come and go, we want to be able to do this. Now, Dr. Murphy is going to own this building. This is part of his retirement. He wants to own the building, be able to sell the building at some point, sell his practice at some point, and still take care of the people in the town of Penfield.
Okay. Board, questions?
Tony's our next move, another public hearing?
That would be the next, step or stage in this.
The other day, Tony reminded me of your intent a couple of years ago to expand the Bangs Hair Salon building when it was Yotini's. Is that still in your mind? We're kind of running out of space here.
If anything, we would like to expand parking eventually. So I don't think we're going to be able to take another footprint of a building and take up any more property itself. I think if we put this building in here, we're maxing out pretty much the property. We don't want to overkill it. We do want to be able to create enough space and enough parking for everybody to be able to work together. And as we all know, parking will work itself out.
Okay. Board, other questions or comments for the property owner or the prospective new owner?
I think it's right for a hearing.
And we're going to still own the rest of the property. Okay, so we'll still be owning the big house and the barn itself, and maintaining that and owning the parking lot also. So, we're not jumping ship. We're here, Greg has a need, we're a developer, we're trying to bring his needs to the table.
No, let's move ahead, and I certainly appreciate the applicant trying to maintain some historic aesthetic to the building too, because Bob, you obviously have a very good track record in the Four Corners of doing that, and Dr. Merkley, appreciate you embracing that. So, thank you.
Yep,
I
you're
would
welcome.
encourage just for preparation for the hearing, when we talked about the connectivity, if there's anything you can get from Mark, in writing or some sort of submission, to just kind of, it's not pertinent, but
Well, I mean, if it's push come to shove, I'm sure, but,
Intention,
Mark has passed this information on. Mark did not put up signs and said this is Mark's Pizzeria sign parking. And he said he was not going to do that. A lot of places go in there and they start putting signs up and say Mark's Pizzeria is
more in
parking
terms of
only.
the sidewalk, that
Did you
part.
see the sidewalk
Part, yeah.
that goes in there
Yeah.
between there? Right. And the same thing was when Mark was working on the layout of his property and his parking, we went to the meetings with the Canandaigua National Bank. They had concerns of parking. We worked it out. Mark did a lot of good for them, creating more parking, reworked his design. And Mark is all about neighborhood, he's all about neighbors, and he's all about village. So, he gave me a verbal. Could I get something in writing? Maybe.
Or just,
Yeah.
I would say make sure you bring it up, or we'll ask about, just so we have that kind of connectivity discussion, and people are aware of that.
But, we all know everybody parks everywhere. We've seen it all, I mean,
We're still going to have the conversation, I think,
Yeah,
is
oh, yeah.
what Councilwoman Metzler is saying.
Yeah.
So just come prepared to have that dialogue.
that's not a problem.
Okay.
Parking was going to be the issue all around. We all
No
know that.
question, no question.
No problem with that at all.
Okay. Staff, anything else that
Yeah.
we should have on the record that
One
isn't?
last thing, as I said, the Historic Preservation Board was very supportive of their proposal, much the way you've given them input. I think there were some very, very minor things that they probably want to meet with you again about, just before you go ahead and do the final design.
Yeah.
It's really more aesthetic than anything else, and I think they just want to get that one last
Okay.
opportunity.
And you'll make that happen and get that done?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Did you see that other barn that I built down the street on Liberty? That other
Yes.
cedar barn? Did you
Yes.
see that for Mark Pignato?
Yes.
It turned out
Did see
really
that.
nice.
Yes, yeah.
Again, trying to put something in the setting there, to make it.
So it kind of
Great.
works with the area, so,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, good. All right. Thank you. Appreciate the time. We'll see you over the next month or two with a formal hearing.
Yep. Jim, you'll send me an email?
I will.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Great, thank you,
Great,
guys.
thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Great night.
All right, you too. This brings us to our action items. Under Law and Finance, the first item is incentive zoning. And this is kind of a prelude to a couple of applications that we have in front of us. So I'll just again ask Jim to just at a very high level give a brief update snapshot, and then we'll take it from there from a dialogue.
Thank you, Tony. For some time now, we've been wrestling with the issue of what is an appropriate incentive for development of an incentive zoning project within the town. We've been in a little bit of a lull until recently that we didn't really need to address it, so we've hidden, but now we've gotten to a point where we have a couple of applications, and I know the board's been, very selective as to what ones they're looking at now for use within the town of Penfield. In this case, Tony and I had a chance the other day. I did send you a matrix that we had prepared a while back, and I know you had it when we were dealing with the Jackson and Plank Road area. In any event, we did prepare this, and on the column that addresses the cost per additional unit, we have a range going anywhere from $8,800 down to $3,250. And I guess it's up to you as a group to decide what you think is an appropriate incentive, given the fact that it's been $3,250 for quite some time now. We could even look at this on an annual basis if you'd like. I think what we're trying to do is get continuity so that there's fairness and equity across the board for every developer that comes in. I know Tony and I looked at this the other day to try and come up with some ideas, and I'm sure you got some thoughts that you want to share with the board, but that's kind of where we are right now, and as Tony noted, we do have Rudy Neufeld in for the Barclay Park project, which can't be approved until you make a decision as to what the appropriate number is. And I know Bill Bendel's also here. He's been waiting in the wings, just trying to find out, what he has to do to get to where he needs to be if he's going to move forward on his project. So, that being the case, I'll leave it to you to further discuss it.
One of the items that Jim and I spoke about, and one of the thoughts that I would like to put on the table for the board to consider is that, as we've had some of these, and not every board member has been through all of them, depending upon, when things first started. So the first actual discussion around incentive zoning dates back to 1999, and all the way up through current and everything in between. And one of the things that I thought might be something for us to consider is how we use those incentives. And we've used them for a number of different things over the years by way of some regional ponds, some sidewalk or an off-site sidewalk, some rehab of a facility at Harris Whalen, some upgrades to sanitary sewers and improvement to drainage and connection to sanitary sewer connection to different properties. One of the things that I thought we should take a look at is any incentives that we take a look at now and in the future, that those be dedicated to the drainage fund. Everybody benefits from the drainage fund. If you're a property owner in the town of Penfield, everybody pays into the drainage fund. That's an area where I think we've made some great strides with the help of the engineering department, Mark, DPW, that we have really increased the amount of work and effort in and around drainage. That's going to be something that's going to be ongoing and will be continual, not to mention work with ponds as well as drainage ways. Some may in fact be permit required, others could be more ditching or culverts and things like that. So the recommendation that I would put on the table for us to think about would be to dedicate any and all funds from this point on to the drainage fund. So that's one piece that I'd put out there for at least some discussion and consideration. And then one of the other things that I would put out for a cost for unit would be in the range of $5,500 to $6,000 per additional unit above and beyond what would be permitted. And again, those are just recommendations from my end to the board for your discussion and
Is
consideration.
that total value or an increase from
Some
the base?
30,000.
That would be a per unit cost. So if 3 units were allowed,
No, I'm saying you said 5,500 above and beyond. So I was wondering if that means you're adding that.
no,
to
it would be
Total.
the total amount per unit, between 55 and 6. And then I think the third comment that I think Jim hit the nail on the head, and that should be something that we have that we revisit again on an annual basis. We could either keep it that, or if there was a need to increase that, but at least that got teed up on an annual basis for review and part of the discussion that the board would have.
Okay.
So any other thoughts, ideas, comments?
So Tony, the 5,500, is that separate? Because I'm looking at sort of my matrix here has a cost of incentives, and then there's a cost of additional unit. So are you implying
So
that?
if you take a look at the cost of the unit in this particular case and multiplied it
The
out,
math?
that's what the
Okay.
amount is. And then in the case where there were some just the overall cost of the incentive that was just an amount that was established, back at that point, in this case, back in 2002 for that
Right.
particular property.
So for the funds going into the drainage fund, that would be obviously for townwide use?
That is correct.
Okay, is there anything in particular that could benefit the local area where these two projects, as far as for a drainage? I'm just curious to know if there's anything that is pertinent to that area.
What I would say is that, in some cases, there may be something that could be done in that area, and I would think that that might be one of the things that we take a look, if there is a need or if there is a problem in that area. Certainly earmarking out of the drainage fund for that particular area. But because the drainage fund is town-wide, and the recommendation would be that if not in that particular area, it could be dedicated to the broader drainage fund across the town.
Okay.
And again, that's something that is designated to every property. It's not this group gets it and this group doesn't. Everybody pays into that drainage fund as a property owner.
Well, the reasoning that drainage affects everybody, so one watershed affects the next watershed over. And,
Right.
So I understand, and I think, I'm interested in the consistency of that, having it all go in the drainage fund, although I do have a bit of a reservation that if there is something that comes up that we're locked in, that, like Rob had said, in the neighborhood, if there's some discretion we can have to accept from that, I don't know.
Well, I would say is that, the drainage fund, because it is town-wide, Mark will take a look, he and his team will take a look at it, and they'll make, the larger recommendations, back to this board for our review and our consideration. So I'll use the Willow Pond Dam, for instance, project that we've got. Some of the smaller, projects. So if you had a small area between a couple of properties, or if you had a ditch that hadn't been cleaned in some period of time, Mark works with DPW on a weekly basis as part of their project review to prioritize that, and it gets prioritized. In some cases, we'll shift priority based on need, flooding conditions, some things like that. So I think it can be.
I was thinking of a project other than a drainage project.
Okay, all right.
If we've locked in, we lock in these
Yep,
funds.
got it.
Solely to drainage, and, there's no exception, no exemption, nothing that we don't waiver from that, and then we have a project that comes up and there is a, for lack of a better term, a project that would have, under the old system, been really a good one to have.
Yep.
Completed by an incentive zoning project. We lose out, that neighborhood loses out on that because we have this strict.
So if we were to pursue that, we could set it up in a way that identifies that unless otherwise designated by the board, those monies would go directly to the drainage fund unless there was a greater need identified by the board.
Yeah,
Something like that.
Right, I
would
mean,
like to see
that's
some
not too
discretion.
dissimilar from where we are now. I mean, when we began to look at incentive zoning, at least in my time, I mean, we've dedicated funds to the capital improvements, to public works.
Right.
So this,
Not all of them, but yes, some of them we have.
Just going through the list, pretty much.
Tends to be
the majority.
well, in the last few years at least,
But not necessarily drainage, so that's, I think, my concern was.
That's what he's saying, drainage.
sidewalk. I mean, I think the
ditches.
only thing different may have been some sidewalks, but
Well, that would be something, if there was in that neighborhood, if you needed something like that.
Yeah, I would support the notion of having the drainage be the consistent, deposit, but I would like to see, or I would propose that the board have some sort of discretion.
I would agree with that. I think the bigger factor in this was just deciding on sort of the value.
Yeah.
And I don't have any problem, Tony, with where your benchmark was there for
Sounds good.
55 to 6. And I think then allowing the board to have some discretion after that,
Yeah.
assuming
More in the
drainage,
application.
public works, whatever it may be. Yep.
Okay.
I think that goes more to the true original intent of the incentive zoning and just the benefit that we're looking at.
Right. Okay. All right. So we can put some, we can put some wording around that, put kind of some meat on that bone. That might be something that we memorialize as part of a resolution too that we have for that. So drainage would be kind of the primary piece, but also if there were, you know, some special projects that would benefit that particular area, that this board would have that flexibility to make that appropriate
Just some
call.
sort of language unless otherwise designated or, you know,
Okay.
allocated.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
But I'm fine with your proposal otherwise.
And board, you know, I threw a range of 55 to 6. Any particular?
And that's something that's going to be reviewed on an annual basis?
That is correct.
Okay. Because
So-
as we found out a year or two ago, when Mark came in and kind of went through some different fees and other,
Right.
you know, costs associated with building, we were way low as far as where the norm is, so
Yep.
you have to expect things to change, so.
Absolutely.
And I propose we start at 6,000 then,
Okay. 6 to start.
given that yearly review,
Okay. All right.
would be my opinion.
All right.
That's fine.
Further discussions, board, on that? Staff, any additional items or comments that you believe should be as part of the record?
No, I think that getting that number clarified is going to help the process tremendously,
Okay.
getting things resolved here.
All right, great. Thank you. We'll move on to our second item. This is authorization for supervisor to sign a release agreement with 2328 Old Browncroft Boulevard. That's the Glendiveres. And sort of to request of Town Attorney Dick Horowitz, essentially we're going through that area with directional drilling, or a piece of it. Mark, so if I get too deep in the weeds, Mark, just make sure that I don't misspeak, but we're going to be doing some directional drilling. Essentially, if you think about it, from the Bell property down to the bridge, and then we got to get across the bridge and or across the creek, and then essentially from that point it'll be open dug down to the County of Monroe's interceptor sewer. To date, we have approximately 70 to 75% of the project complete. This is the last leg connecting that in, and currently the Glendiveres has their own pumps, grinder pumps, that pump up and out in a small force main that goes into the sewer. And so this release agreement will help us facilitate incorporating that into our system as part, and then the ultimate elimination of that, and then that area would be fed by a gravity feed sewer versus pumped and a force main. So this is kind of that last component, and the town attorney was just looking for an authorization for myself to sign off on that.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. Kind of part of the discussion, part of the, you know, the original plan for that, and that just
Yeah, we discussed
finalizes
this.
that. So, okay. Thank you. That takes us to number 3, and that's the Barclay, and I'm sorry, Lisa, if you just reflected the board, you know, supported that, unanimously supported that item. Thank you. Barclay Subdivision, 1213 Fairport 9 Mile Point Road, and Mr. Neufeld, if you'd like to join us, if you want to stay there, you can do that. And Mr. Costello, any additional comments to tee this up for the board's discussion?
Just the background, Rudy came to the board initially in a concept review process at the table. He had a 22-unit subdivision he was proposing. From the time that he got from that point to the point where he came to a public hearing, he submitted a plan for 24 units, 12 duplex units. At that point in time, we had our public hearing. We received input from the neighbors, particularly the lady to the north, immediately to Rudy, who was concerned about the pond being proposed adjacent to her for mosquito issues and some other health issues. Rudy subsequently went back. The DOT had requested that the roadway be shifted a little bit to the north because there was a head wall there that had to be maintained. That gave them the ability, luckily, to relocate the pond area from the north to the south. All the pond area is now located to the south of the road. His intent was to install a small park area in that area to the north of the road. We have had discussions with the neighbor. She seems to be somewhat supportive of the process the way it's proposed now. The staff was concerned about some issues regarding the biofilter system and how to get access to it to ensure that it's maintained on an ongoing basis. Rudy did come back and identify the fact that his prospectus for the homeowners association will lock in the property owner's responsibilities to ensure that it's not filled in or graded over for a garden or whatever the case may be. We do have the ability to get in and look at that site to make sure that, the biofilter system, make sure it does maintain its functionality. I think most of the technical issues have been addressed. Other than that, we've talked about landscaping the area at the end of the T turnaround to ensure that the neighbors to the west are not impacted by streetlights coming down with the cars on the road, and that we've got the ability to go in and make sure that all drainage facilities are intact and functional at all times. That's kind of where we are right now.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
We still need to address sidewalks. If
Yes,
sidewalk waiver, we're queuing up other sidewalk waivers as part of that.
The board will have to make a decision at some point in time. It doesn't necessarily have to be now. The resolution, if you're willing to give us the go-ahead to prepare one, would indicate that it would have to be compliance with this town sidewalk policy. In essence, excuse me, this is a private drive. It does not require sidewalks on it, but there is frontage along Route 250. There are no other sidewalks along Route 250, so you probably have to consider some type of a waiver. We are in the process right now preparing a new waiver sidewalk policy that would address waivers. So as a result, we would have to work with you on that at some point in time in the future.
So is it 22 or 24 units?
Well, at the last meeting we had here, Tony indicated some concern for the number of units. The number of units that you did hear at the public hearing was 24. It was advertised for that, and the plan shows 24 units.
And it's still 24 based on...
I'm assuming that, I think at our last meeting you indicated that the house was an option to either preserve it or tear it down. If the house were an option, that would put it to 25 units or 23 units, I think.
Yeah, after our neighborhood meeting, and I mentioned this to the supervisor and Mr. Costello, it was an overwhelming response from all the neighbors that they really wanted the house to go, and we came in to the public hearing with the intention, and I didn't do a good job clarifying that there was option A and B, that everybody overwhelmingly said, please take that house down, and that afforded us to have the 24 units because the house went away, and we would still like to proceed with that, but again, we're happy to take whatever input the board has. We think it's a better project with that design, but we're certainly open to any comments the board has.
I don't think we really care about that. It's 24. I mean, that's what we're talking about. And Jim says it'll be 25 if we keep the house, so we're looking at 24.
Yeah, and
So
my
that would mean
concern,
the house is
recall,
gone, right?
as you recall, at the hearing was just to make sure the neighbors had seen that, what we were seeing was what the neighbors had seen, reviewed,
Yes.
and given input on. That was my biggest concern.
It was.
Right.
They were presented both options.
Other discussions?
I'm okay with the 24 and the removal of the house.
Yes.
And I'll just repeat what I said at the last meeting, again, by way of all cards on the table, full disclosure. While I'm supportive of the overall project, I'm not necessarily supportive of the 24 units. So this will come up before the board for a vote, which may or may not get my vote. And again, I just, for the record, so that all those cards are on the table. Okay. Other discussion? Comfortable with Mr. Costello preparing a resolution of approval to be reviewed by the board for this Friday for possible inclusion on the February 17th agenda?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So Jim, if you would take a stab at putting that together and getting that out to the board for their review.
I will do that tomorrow.
Great. Other discussion, other comments, board? Staff? All right, great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We'll move on to Public Works, under action items. Mr. Valentine is up as it relates to a sidewalk waiver at 2091 Harris Road.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Passing around the overall plan showing the location of the property. If you look at the lower right corner, the parcel is highlighted, 2091 Harris Road. Obviously on Harris Road, just north of Penfield Road. This is an administrative review. It's a single-family home lot. Is asking for a sidewalk waiver. Obviously bringing it back before the board. Showing Zach prepared a map showing in kind of the reddish color where the closest sidewalks are. We've done that in the past just to show proximity as we look at connectivity and as we're looking typically to connect blocks in other areas. This is kind of outside. Yeah, sorry. It's kind of a bluish color in the lower right corner, rectangular box. The whole property is highlighted, just kind of showing the outline of it. So it's approximately 400 feet of frontage on Harris Road, but it's a single house in the area. PRC looked at it. PRC is recommending a waiver for it, but I know we're still working through. Our current policy is waiver would be a $500 waiver fee for that, paid back to the sidewalk fund. We've been looking at and plan to have something before the board shortly, with a proposal for a modified or an updated sidewalk waiver policy. I've called, emailed, tried to contact many of the other communities within Monroe County to see what they do. Most of the other communities either contacted Irondequoit, they're built out. Brighton's focused mostly on maintenance. They're not really constructing new stuff. Perrington, Pittsford, and Henrietta all concentrate their stuff on mainline roads. They don't do any subdivision stuff. Webster doesn't have sidewalks. About the only one close to what Penfield does is Greece. Greece requires, similar to Penfield, all frontages and all internal roads on a dedicated road be completed. Their waiver is 80% of construction cost. PRC, and I'll share this with the board, PRC was looking at formula that would look at the frontage, the internal roads, what full compliance is, and then possibly a 50% of construction cost. What we're also looking at is there an upper limit to the cost per lot? And we're looking at as we go toward these lots in East Penfield, and tying that in with the Monroe County annually does bids for construction of sidewalks. I don't have the 2016 numbers, but 2015 was $36.75 a linear foot. So if he has a 400-foot frontage, he's roughly running $15,000 is a current construction cost to install it. If you're at 50%, you're at $7,500. We're looking at, is there a, in a multiple lot subdivision, you can kind of spread that cost out, over the multiple homes. If you're a single family homeowner, $7,500 is a significant dollar amount. While we want, either compliance, put it in, or, what's that equity or equitable value to pay back to the sidewalk fund. So we're also looking at, I think that's the last part that the PRC is looking at, is there an upper limit of $2,500, $5,000 per lot? Again, that could be adjustable per year, but, and this isn't even the biggest lot. If somebody bought a corner lot on, Salt Road and
Right.
Sweets Corners Road and had 1,000 feet of frontage, you could be looking at a $100,000 sidewalk waiver fee.
Well,
We don't want to get excessive and out of control, but, something that's, I think, more equitable than $500.
Than $500,
well,
yeah.
up before us tonight is a proposed waiver for 2091 Harris Road under our current sidewalk policy.
Right.
And certainly, we're not going to subject this property owner to any proposed policy. So I would propose that we grant the
Although we're holding one at 1445 Jackson Road, kind
that's-
of waiting for a similar type of thing. So.
So we just want to hold this one too, and then...
Well, but before we say yea or nay on that, Mark, if you would mind, maybe just to refresh our memory while we're looking at it there and why, we elected to hold it for discussion purposes.
Yes, 1445 Jackson is the property just north of D'Angelo's new subdivision, Woodbridge Court, here on Jackson Road. I think that's an area that sidewalks may come in the near future, and maybe that's another differentiation we can look at with the board is
Because that goes to the town
east of
hall.
250
Well,
is
I'm thinking
one
in
level
terms-
is something else,
There is a
but,
sidewalk.
I mean, we're looking at about 668 feet of frontage. You're looking at about a $25,000 bill for a single-family property owner there as well. So either we're looking at compliance, install the sidewalks, which is about $25,000 of sidewalks installed on that property versus our current policy is a $500 waiver fee in that area.
My input is that we have a current policy in place. Why are we holding two property owners' applications for us to change our policy? Have the applications been accepted for the waivers?
Yes, and 1445 is an approved.
I think you're trying to
Project.
assist the property owner on Jackson Road, because right now, the one that he's talking about tonight, there isn't a sidewalk for miles
Right,
to it.
right.
So
This one is more of a
There are
less of a
sidewalks
discussion.
immediately adjacent to that property owner on Jackson Road, and I
So the
think that's
Jackson
what you're
Road,
wrestling with.
the Jackson Road one has basically a reason other than the policy to hold it.
That's right.
This one, though, does not.
No. Well, the problem with the one over here on Jackson is there's a sidewalk immediately adjacent to it. And I think the intent would have been normally to say, hey, just put them in, but it's going to be an exorbitant cost, and I think you're trying to wrestle with trying to get something more equitable for the property owner and the town in terms of other monies for sidewalks, maybe in other locations, if this is not the right spot to put it at this time. In this case that you're talking about tonight, there's no sidewalk anywhere out there.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering why we're talking about
But there's a
the
difference
policy when
between
there's-
Sample those.
building the sidewalk and granting waiver to not build the sidewalk, though. I agree with Paula in the sense that, we're still in discussion, or I guess we're still considering whether or not the sidewalk should be built on Jackson Road.
That's right.
Right, I don't think
that's
the
right.
sidewalk should be built on Harris Road.
Right.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
why-
that's the
So,
I mean, that could be part of the formula as well, if it's not part of our
Yeah,
policy
right.
says all mainline roads within the town of Penfield.
Right.
right,
So-
I was very concerned when we had this discussion last time about this exact scenario where you had the one residential property somewhere where they wanted to build, and they were looking at a $15,000
And
to
they're sad,
$25,000 sidewalk fee, as opposed to, like I think Jim mentioned, the development, where you have, so many square footage, but then you have 22 different parcels or something, so.
That's right, we're trying to weigh, and I'm sorry to interrupt, weigh, is there an upper limit per lot? If you're doing a 14, 15, 50 lot subdivision, obviously that cost can be defrayed over the number of lots, but if you're a single family house, with all the frontage.
But is that pertinent to this one?
It's not.
I mean, I think, isn't this
It's
what
another
we have on the table?
conversation.
Yeah,
It
that's
seems
another.
like there's two different...
That's up to the board, I just know we're
we've
looking
even-
at the policy, and we have one currently tabled, we have one before us tonight, however you want to handle this.
Yes, I think that this can be separated in the sense that this one should be granted the waiver under the current the waiver ordinance. The one on Jackson Road, however, still may warrant the sidewalk to be built. So I think that it's a different conversation.
Well, it's almost like they could buy into the pot of the sidewalk, so eventually it does go in front of their house, but they shouldn't have to pay thousands of dollars. I mean, that's one on Jackson.
Well, and
There's
that's
gotta
what
be
we're
a way to-
wrestling with. I
there's
think-
gotta be a way to write it out that
Right.
is fair.
I think that's what you're
without-
trying to do. You're trying to get something that's equitable, but not kill the guy in the process of doing it. And to your thought process, we've been wrestling with the idea of having a two-tiered system, where if you're out in the middle of nowhere, where we know there are not going to be any sidewalks within a reasonable time frame, that would be more in keeping with what we're doing tonight than, you know, going on to what we're doing on
Yeah,
Jackson.
I just, as you can tell, I have a concern about applying some, discuss some policy or, you know, that, not applying the policy we have in place
Right.
for the action item we have tonight. That's my concern. No matter who it benefits. I mean, I think that we have to follow what our current policy is and formally enact a new one before we apply that to any other, you know,
I agree.
application.
But this one tonight, I think we should just grant the waiver.
And then I would at least put a recommendation to the board until we revise our policy, not accept any further waivers.
That would be, that, I would
That's
be fine
fine,
with that.
that's
Yeah,
fine.
I think we can do that.
I don't want to have
Yeah.
to stack of waivers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, PRC will come with a recommendation and at least, you know, have something before you can look at
Yep.
the math, look at how it goes, and then
Which I think would
obviously
be-
dollar figures can be adjusted here and there. but
And certainly, the sooner the better, too, so that we
Yeah,
don't...
we don't want them backing up on you, then we
Exactly,
wrestle with it.
exactly. So we gotta be reasonable on that end as well.
I'd say that's why we looked out to other communities. How do they do it? How do they handle it?
And we certainly let any Jackson Road and any future applications obviously know what, you know,
Right.
why that's being done.
Okay.
Okay. So for this one at 2091 Harris Road, board is looking to waive and then collect the $500 consistent with the current policy. Okay. All right. Moving on to Public Works number 2, waiver of road length and additional lots at 2735, 2745 Penfield Road. So, Mr. Valentine, if you would.
Thank you. With us this evening is Chris Schultz, Schultz Associates is the engineer on the project. Joe DePrima, the property of the property out on Penfield Road. We had this one in a couple of weeks ago before we could talk about ponds. So we talked about the 2 ponds in the property. The board decided to move ahead with granting the grading fill permits. We'll work with Mr. DePrima to wrap that up. But also part of that, and this falls back to our town design criteria, and this is something we're looking at this year to revise, but something we've gone through for years. Our policy currently says that all roads, on a dead-end road, should be no longer than 1,000 feet. And it also says you should have no more than 5 homes on a private drive. So the first plan, the 11 by 17, shows Mr. DePrima's plan and project. His home is located in the center currently. It's also up there on the map behind you. And then it shows the drive coming in as a private drive with 9 additional lots, going for a 10-lot subdivision. So it's about 2,200 feet long, if I'm correct, with 10 lots. So on both accords, he'd be looking at a waiver from our policy. I pulled out a list of private drives we currently have in town, in many different fashions that Jeff had kind of been assembling for a number of years. Shows we do have many private drives that are above and below the 1,000-foot limit, and it shows we have many number of units, either well above or below that level. So just kind of wanted to provide that to the town board for your information. It's color-coded by basically what the ending of the road is. There's the only difference. So CDS is a cul-de-sac, DE is a dead end. The blue color is a hammerhead and then a looped road, you know, at the bottom end of it. It differentiates between apartments, single-family residential, length of the road, width of the road, whether it's gutters, not gutters. But it's just a lot of data the prior town engineer was gathering, but thought that was a good point of consideration for the board, and maybe a point of consideration as we get into modifying the design criteria. Is our design criteria no longer valid? You know, I think the 5 lots we've had in place for a homeowners association, we spoke with Mr. DePrima and has informed him that he would have to form an HOA, you know, with the 10 lots in there to, you know, maintain the road and take care of it. You know, 1,000 feet, I think we were just looking at not having, you know, dead-ended streets all over the place within the community, connect them where they can. We do have a farm market to the east that I don't think, at least in the near future, is looking to be developed. We have some historic property to the west with some steep slopes, wetland areas, so I don't see connectivity to the west in the near future if they were to develop to have a looped road. So, kind of a bowling alley type lot in the middle that kind of lends itself that you have to have a long linear road to make it lay out. Anything I didn't cover or go over, but that's
I
kind
guess why we have you as the town engineer.
So as far as the building design of the road, Mark, does it meet town specifications? I mean, as far as getting emergency vehicles to the end and around and back, I mean,
It will. I mean, currently, it's just a sketch plan before the planning board. So they came in as a sketch. This is one of the items we told them they had to take care of before coming back for preliminary final. They came a couple of weeks ago, talked about the ponds. The ponds didn't have permits. They came before this board to get that, get the pond encroachments off the neighboring property. And then the other part for him to move ahead is, if we can get away from the design criteria, to move ahead, but we would look at, it would be built to our normal standards in a private drive.
Okay.
H20 loading would obviously have to meet requirements for fire trucks, ambulance, emergency
Right.
vehicles to get in and out of there.
right.
Do you know if others, these roads had waivers from us?
They would have to.
They would have.
If
If they're over
they
1,000.
exceeded the 1,000 feet or the
Right, and there's several of them.
5 units. Jamonda Way is right across the street. That's one that's
Once was,
recently converted from private to
Right.
public. I don't know if that's a question, is there any consideration for this to be a
Well, I think I would
public road, and would you?
kind of put in the road at the right width to begin with. Accessible down the road.
I mean, the major difference, and, I mean, we have the same width for private and public for that
Oh.
length of road. It's 3 inches of stone more, so.
Oh, is that what it is?
I think the other part would obviously be allocating a right-of-way, and so if you build it to a public dedicated road standard, I mean, it's up to you if you'd like to apply for a dedicated road. I know you had talked about possibly having a gate at the entrance. Obviously, that would be the difference if it was truly private, it would be gated off versus the publicly dedicated road and all that comes with that, but, the standard of, building a road is not much different.
The board's getting a lot of requests.
Yeah,
for
the advantage
conversion.
of building it to
Well,
spec to begin with
yeah, I was
is
just
that in the
gonna say.
event in the future, they
Makes
want to
everybody's
do
life
that, it's
harder.
a lot easier and
The financial
less
liability
expensive.
to the homeowners,
Yeah,
right?
homeowners association.
I think the gated entrance that you had talked about would be the
Yes,
defining difference
yeah,
between.
just some items in here that
you
wouldn't
dedicated
work well
and
with dedicated roads right off the bat, but
well, if
it
it's
would
up
be
to
built
spec.
to a standard that it could be converted.
Yeah.
What's the length again, Mark?
About 2,200 feet.
22. Got it.
Our current design criteria says 1,000 feet.
Right.
But with the water authority, you'll be running main down the road and hydrants and everything else. I think some of that might have been lane length of hose for fire trucks in the past. Obviously, new trucks have longer hose, but the water authority's taken a little different stance on private drives than they have in the past.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, yes.
They used to have flag lots for each lot out to the street.
Sure.
With a master meter at the street and then individual services back, so you're running services
Multiple bunched up services for each house.
thousands of feet.
Got it.
The water authority's kind of changed their tune a little bit on that. You can have a private drive with the private hydrants and
Yep,
water
yep.
main up there, so you'd have hydrants to tap into all along the road.
Got it.
Protection.
Got it. Okay.
And the thought process when we created this criteria was that, we have several streets in town that are quite long with hundreds of houses on them that don't have any alternate means of access out. We wanted to bring them back down to a point where it was reasonable and you didn't have to go through one neighborhood after another to get out, and you couldn't do it.
And if you look at connectivity of adjacent lots, can you loop it? I think this one is just kind of,
What was the, if I may, and if you said, I apologize, but just getting comments, feedback back from PRC?
I think PRC was supportive of.
PRC
the
didn't have any
waiver
major
request.
Okay.
issues or
Find it
concerns
to
with
be
it.
a concern. We talked to the fire marshal, who was also a member, and he indicated that he was supportive of it.
Okay.
Yeah, the slope and the grade of the road is not an
I was going to
issue.
say that was kind of the next, we have there's some criteria about slope of road and what have you, and that's not an issue as part of that.
I don't have any issues, and to be consistent, this is very helpful to have this.
Yeah, this is good stuff. to keep that running list. I think that's, some good information. Board?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Everybody's good with that? So the two items, one is length and one is number of homes. So both of those are acceptable to the board.
Joe, are you going to have an exclusive builder for this area, or are you going to do kind of one by one by one by one?
No, they'll be sold as individual lots.
Are they? Okay. And then they can bring their own builder in to build a house?
Right.
Okay.
Got it.
I just want to make the board and the applicant aware that because our ordinance still requires no more than 5 houses on a private driveway, we'll have to go to the zoning board of appeals to request a variance to allow more than 5 houses. That'll be part of the site plan review.
It's in 2 locations. It's in our design criteria, which is a waiver from the town board.
But also in the ordinance.
5 lots is in our zoning code, which falls under the
And the zoning
jurisdiction
board
of
will
the
be made
zoning board.
aware, of course, of our consensus.
Yeah. And that's something, again, as we revise the design criteria this year, maybe we look to modify that or, adjust that.
Okay. Good. Board, anything else on this one? Staff, anything else we should be aware of?
Just one last comment.
Thank you.
I'm looking at this map and I'm seeing Jomanda Way right across the street from you. And we went through a lot of work to get Jomanda Way scored away. It was a private drive. They basically severely requested that become a dedicated road, and you should consider the alternatives of a dedicated road versus a private drive. You should at least look at the
We'll take a
cost
hard look at it
differences.
again.
That's right.
Okay. Good point,
You
Jim.
still have a gate with a,
You can't gate the road. You might have some type of decorative pillars on either side, but, you can't gate the roadway.
Yeah.
They could build it to public road specs,
Yeah.
still have it private with a gate, and if they decide down the road 10 years to
Right.
make it public, they just have to take the gate out.
Well, the only problem is 10 years down the road, that roadway won't be in the same condition it is when they first build it, and those homeowners are gonna have to chip in. and
It
start
should be if we
building.
have a strong homeowners association.
Yeah,
then-
but a heck of a lot
Right.
farther than a Jomanda Way situation if they build it now to,
And I think allocating the space for a right-of-way, I think was
Yeah,
the issue we've run into with some others, villas and
Right.
and whatnot. The homes are so close to the road, I would assume with large 2-acre plus lots, you could set the house back from the street. So if you're looking at a 60-foot, and they've already shown a 60-foot utility and access
Utility
easement
access, sure.
through there, which is virtually a right-of-way kind
Yep.
of concept. So at least they're planning for it with other locations. The homes were so
Yes.
close to the road or up against the right-of-way. Just allocating that right-of-way space in the future would be quite onerous.
yeah, it's certainly your call, but that's just been a real recent experience that we would share with you just as far as things to keep in mind for that dedicated versus private. And
absolutely, thank you.
All right, great, gentlemen, thank you. This brings us to the end of the agenda. We have just one item that's of a legal discussion for executive session, so I'll ask that we just adjourn this meeting at 8:11, and we'll pick up in the conference room in about 2 or 3 minutes.